All right, welcome to Modcast. New and improved, we hope. Sound quality, camera image, new setup. Got a squeaky chair. Probably gonna have to do something about that. Um, just a quick test run with the new gear. See how things are going. But I thought I'd say a few words. Um, a lot's gone on since my last posting, obviously. Memo-gate, as they're calling it. Um, and so I thought I'd weigh in a little on that. I got a good friend who's politically on the left. I mean, he's a common sense guy too, but he's like, oh, I think it's nothing, and whatever you think about the memo, you can't call it nothing. I mean, if nothing else, I think it proves that we need to be watching our government a hell of a lot closer than we are. I've talked before about the appeal to authority, and someone's like, well, they're attacking the FBI. Look, these people work for us, okay? If you're an employer and you got people working for you and they do something, and they go, well, I was doing this because I thought it was the best thing to do. Well, as an employer, you have the right to evaluate and go, well, okay, yeah, that you shouldn't have done that though. Or, well, I bent these rules because, I wanted to make the profit. Well, as the employer, you have the right to go, okay, well, we're not going to do that. We have the rules in place for a reason. You shouldn't have broke those rules. Okay, and you have to have that supervisory control, regardless of party, okay? Because I got problems on the Republican side too, as you guys know. I mean, I'm independent, and there's people doing some good videos on this stuff. All right, just pay attention to how people say things and how they respond. I mean, if you, on the one hand, you can't fight it and say, oh, it's going to be the end of the republic if you do this, and then when it comes out, say, oh, it's nothing. Especially if you knew what was in it beforehand, as Adam Schiff and others did. Okay. And again, I'm not witch hunting a particular party. What I want is accountability, and there's rules in place. So Maddow goes on and says that, well, Susan Rice, she didn't have a choice because, there was all this suspicion and there was a Russia investigation, and what are we going to tell them? Look, there's rules. There's rules. You just follow the rules. That's how it works. And if you make a decision not to follow the rules because you're trying to achieve some end, again, your boss, your employer, has the right to know what you did and to make a decision about what should happen as a result of your doing it that way. I mean, that's just a basic principle, and that's what we fail to remember, is that these people work for us. Okay, I mean, government's a necessary evil in some senses, where, look, we need someone to help with protecting the state and all that. From foreign influence and stuff, but we'll solve our problems with one another, libertarian idea. So, I mean, you can say it's a nothing burger, but it's not. It's clearly there's something wrong, and clearly supervision is necessary, and they can't be trusted to supervise themselves, and that they've established. So, and we know this, okay? I mean, you've probably seen it in your work, where if the people responsible for investigating something or checking out a problem, if they are the ones who committed the thing wrong, you have to get someone from outside, all right? So then you try Mueller, but if Mueller's investigation has problems, and again, not just impropriety, the appearance of impropriety, okay? In order for people to have faith in the system, you have to follow the rules, and you have to avoid the appearance of impropriety. Okay, and now, I mean, I don't know how far up it goes. It's moved away from the idea of conspiracy theories because there's sufficient evidence to create those questions. Nobody denies what's in the memo. Now, you can say it's a spin on it. Okay, that's fine, but it's enough. There's enough there that even if it's spun, I want to see the whole thing, because you work for me, you work for us, right? So there's enough of an appearance of impropriety. So again, if you had two employees who did something wrong and they were competing with one another, and one employee said one thing and the other employee said the other thing, what would you do? You would go, let me see it. Let me see it. Stop talking, both of you, and let me see it. Okay? That's a standard thing. Again, when you're dealing with employees or crisis. So and they'll sit there and go, well, but I had to do this because I thought this. No, stop. Just stop talking. Okay? I get it. I hear your story. But you need to let me see it. All right? Well, boss, we can't let you see it because this. Hey, guess what? I'm the boss. So let me see it, or I'm going to find somebody else to get it for me. That's just how it works. Okay? That's called being an adult. Okay? And it's like if your kids, right? Um, I've talked about this before with students, right, where they go, uh, it's in Antigone, where the sentry comes in and he's telling Creon that the body's been buried, the law's been broken, and he says, the first thing I want you to know is I didn't do it, okay, and I didn't see who did it. And, Creon's a megalomaniac. I mean, he's paranoid about control, he's trying to get control of the city and all that, but he's in the position of authority, he's the boss. But the key point here is that childish response of, and that smokescreen of, well, look, I didn't do it, or, I had the best intentions, okay? And if you come home and your kids are like, okay, one kid's like, well, first of all, I didn't do it, and the other kid's like, well, I didn't do it either. The first thing you want to know is, oh, crap, what is it? What happened, right? Let me see it, okay? And then we'll figure out who's responsible and what the consequences are going to be for that. But don't continue to sit there and tell me, oh, it wasn't me, and I had to do it because of this, and I had to do it. You would never tolerate that. It's a childish response. So, again, we're so partisan, as we all know, and Trump makes people so visceral in their responses, and people's defense of Obama is so visceral, because we're so afraid of being wrong, right? I don't want to have been wrong about somebody. We thought he was the greatest, and what if he did things that were wrong? Well, it's not a reflection on you. We're all wrong at some point. We make mistakes. Okay, it's no big deal. But the main thing is, again, in this system, or in any system, right? You don't have the right to go outside the rules just because you think it's the best thing to do, right? The rules are there in order to make sure that the institutions last, no matter who's in them, because they recognize that there's going to be people in those positions who act out of their own self-interest or aren't able to do it. Because, again, conservative position, I suppose you could argue, that human nature doesn't change, right? That we're by nature prone to be selfish and self-preserving, which is normal, right? I mean, you can argue it's, people can argue it's evil. I think selfishness does lead to evil, but I don't think all instances of selfishness are evil. I think there's a natural penchant for self-preservation. Duh. Evolutionarily speaking, there's that, right? So the system recognizes that people are going to act in their own self-interest. Unless they, again, are adults, are moral and, atoms, right? The system's made only for a moral and religious people. Because those people will self-monitor. They won't be afraid of consequences. They won't be afraid of being wrong. They will recognize that their inherent tendency is to act selfishly, to act in a self-preservation manner, and that they need to check that influence, and they need help checking that influence from outside forces. And the more we increase information, the more arrogant, the more prideful people become, the more they think they can make decisions on their own, and that in the end will justify the means. But that's not how it works. So, my thoughts on the memo. My problem with the Republicans is the budget thing. I mean, I've talked about this before. I have a lot of other problems with establishment Republicans, but nobody cuts programs. And like everyone knows, if you want to save money, if you're in a financial crisis, or if you want to get out of debt, you have to cut spending. You can increase revenue, but you also have to cut spending. I mean, it's the only way. And you have to look at where you can cut spending. And obviously the entitlements are the big thing that we can't, that are so huge, and yet to cut spending on those is to cost votes. But see, again, you have people who are interested in not losing their jobs, which again is a normal thing, self-preservation, but that's why they were supposed to be term limits, right? That's why term limits are a good idea, because then you can make decisions that are for the best for the organization and not about you keeping your job, which is a moral impulse, right? I mean, to keep your job is to provide for your family and, right, all those things. So what you have is you've put things in moral conflict, a subject for another video. But when the rules are in place in order, and the lines and the boundaries are in place in order that you, look, moral questions of right and wrong are difficult enough in a lot of cases. When you get into complex things, right? Like how do you care for the poor and healthcare and things like that. Okay, those are difficult questions because resources, coercion, all the different things that come into that. Those questions are hard enough. You don't want to complicate those by taking what are two good moral impulses, your desire to help the nation as a whole, which is a good moral impulse, and your desire, your need to preserve your job and provide for your family, which is also a moral, noble thing. When you put those things into conflict, um, you make it more difficult. So the guidelines and the rules, which people start to see as things that get in the way and complicate and should be overridden or rejected, um, they're actually there to make things easier, not to make things more complicated. Because at the deepest level, those things are much more complicated and they're difficult. And they mean you have to make decisions that other people may not like in the short term, with a sense for what the long-term consequences are, and increasing the deficit on levels, commensurate with or in excess of the previous administration, where Obama essentially doubled the national debt. I mean, that's just not a good idea. I mean, my kids, your kids, our grandkids, to quote from Dr. Strange, right? The bill comes due. At some point, they're going to collect. And you can kick the can down the road all you want, but it's irresponsible. It's short term. So, anyway, two quick things. Try this out, see how the upload works from here. Hit like, subscribe, share if you can. Remember, government works for us, okay? And you have a right to ask your employees to show you what they screwed up or what they did and how they did it, because you have an obligation to do that, actually, to make sure that your business functions properly and your shareholders are properly ran. And we're all shareholders, we're all owners. We have an obligation to do that. So, because look, we're all going to make mistakes. Okay? We're going to be wrong sometimes. But you have to be more concerned with doing right. And doing right is admitting when you're wrong, and being able to accept the consequences of that. All right. So, hope you have a good holiday weekend, President's Day. And yeah, just remember, be more concerned with being right, with doing right, than with being right. Thanks for watching. Cheers.